The project was called Operation Boredom. It wasn't born out of desperation. In the year 1978, Earth was a lush, post-scarcity paradise where death had been cured and hunger was a dusty myth found only in history books. We didn't leave because we had to. We left because we were dying of terminal boredom, suffocating under the weight of our own perfection. The distance between stars was too vast for metal hulls and fragile meat. So, we weaponized the only thing in the universe that moves faster than light. Consciousness. It started when we colonized Mars. For centuries, reincarnation had been dismissed as spiritual nonsense, but the red planet turned myth into data. Martian-born children began remembering lives they hadn't lived, reciting the serial numbers of sunken Earth vessels, or weeping for the scent of rain they had never smelled. Scientists finally looked closer, realizing the soul was simply a specific frequency of quantum information, a unique wave function of the self. Death wasn't an end. It was just a signal loss. Once we proved the soul was a broadcast, we realized the solar system was finally open for exploration. If a soul could drift to Mars by accident, we could fire it to the stars by design. By building a massive transmitter, the Aether-Cannon, we could beam a human mind across the void at a velocity that made Einstein's limit look like a crawl. The catch? Physics demands a container. To be born on a world like Krazhul-V, a human soul had to hijack a developing fetus at the exact moment of biological ignition, the spark. Dr. Rex Kandice sat in the displacement chair, the conductive cold gel seeping into the seams of his suit. He wasn't trembling with fear. He was shivering with a desperate electric anticipation. He had spent 80 years on Earth tasting every vintage, climbing every peak, and sleeping with every archetype of beauty, until the world had turned into a grey, flavourless mush. "It isn't a transition," Rex whispered into his log, a faint, bored smile playing on his lips. "It's a hijack. I'm a metaphysical parasite. To live there, I have to extinguish whatever spark was meant to occupy that body. I will feel it happen. It's the only way I'll know I'm truly alive." The machine began to hum, a low, thrumming vibration that bypassed the ears and rattled the marrow of his bones. Then came the push. Suddenly, the vibration peaked into a jagged, agonizing spike. Rex felt his heart seize, a wet, final snap in his chest as the sheer power of the Aether-Cannon fried his nervous system. The sensation of his own death was the first interesting thing that had happened to him in nearly a century. He didn't mourn his body. He cheered for the sensation as he flatlined. Rex felt himself stretched thin. A wire of thought pulled across light years until he was nothing but a scream of data. Then, a sudden, violent compression. He was in a dark, suffocatingly warm space. He wasn't alone. There was a flickering, fragile warmth beside him. The original occupant. The rightful heir to the form he now claimed. In the crushing, psychic weight of the merger, Rex felt a tiny, wordless pulse of confusion. It was the proto-soul of the body he now occupied. Rex didn't hesitate. He reached out and crushed it with the curiosity of a child popping a bubble. The sensation was exquisite, a psychic aperitif of raw, unrefined life. He had committed his first murder for the sheer, sensory high of it before he had even drawn a breath of alien air. He was not human. He was a Skitter-Wight, a spindly, six-limbed nightmare of chitinous plating and jagged edges. He had 3 eyes that didn't see colors, but rather the vibrating heat maps of the ultraviolet spectrum. The sensory input was agonizing. The world was a jagged strobe light of neon radiation. His human mind craved the novelty of it. He marveled at his serrated pincers that clicked with every involuntary twitch. The Skitter-Wight society was hive-based and primitive, a mindless cycle of harvesting fungal spores. Rex spent his childhood mimicking the rhythmic, clicking cadence of his broodmates. Every second was a frantic sensory overload. The way the fungal spores tasted like burning copper, the way the hive queen's pheromones hit his brain like a physical blow. It was vivid. It was violent. It was real. As he reached his secondary molting, Rex decided that simply observing the cycle was no longer enough. He wanted to see if his human ego could be inherited, or at least simulated. He sired a clutch of 12, not out of biological drive, but because he was curious if he could train a monster to think like a man. He kept them close, using a series of sharp, rhythmic pincer clicks to overwrite the queen's primal commands. He taught them the silent click, a complex linguistic frequency that bypassed the hive mind. His offspring became his first laboratory, 12 spindly, six-limbed disciples who began to value the fermented tang of experimental spores over the bland, regulated diet of the collective. But the queen was the ultimate dampener. She was a mountain of pulsating, pheromonal flesh that kept the world grey and obedient. She was the Krazhul-V version of Earth's safety nets, and Rex hated her for it. The queen is a frequency. Rex clicked to his secret cell of rebels one evening, the heat maps of their bodies glowing a rebellious neon orange in the dark. But even a broadcast can be jammed. He didn't lead a revolution for freedom. He led it for the aesthetics of the explosion. Using the copper he had taught them to smelt, Rex helped his brood construct massive, polished reflectors. On the night of the great spawning, they positioned the plates to catch the rising ultraviolet suns, funneling a blinding, jagged spike of radiation directly into the queen's sensitive ocular stalks. As she shrieked, a sound that vibrated through the chitin of every white for miles, her pheromonal grip snapped. The hive didn't just wake up. It shattered. Rex stood on a precipice of volcanic glass, watching with clinical delight as his children led the charge, their copper-tipped pincers tearing into the perfect order he had helped destroy. It was the most beautiful thing he had seen in 2 lifetimes. Absolute, unscripted chaos. Years passed. Rex grew into his adult carapace, his pincers scarred from labor and the coup. He felt the lingering ghost of the soul he stole every time he entered the dormant state. It wasn't an accusatory hum to him. It was a souvenir, a reminder of the price he'd paid for this front-row seat to the universe. The Skitter-Wight's hypermetabolism meant they only lived 20 Earth years. To Rex, the trade-off was a bargain. He could have lived 500 years in a velvet-lined stasis of perfection on Earth, or he could burn out in 20 years of jagged, neon-colored screaming. He chose the fire. He began to innovate, playing with the natives' evolution like a bored child with a magnifying glass over an anthill. He showed his broodmates how to smelt copper and sharpen stones. He wasn't helping them. He was building a playground. He was retrofitting a primitive world into a laboratory just to see if he could. One day, while carving geological markers into an obsidian cliff face, he saw another white watching him. It stepped forward and used its middle pincer to scratch a perfect Pythagorean triangle into the volcanic dust. Rex felt a surge of camaraderie. This was the ultimate underground club. By the time Rex was in his twilight years, mere months away from his biological expiration, the pioneers had successfully formed a secret technocratic cabal. They stood atop a massive spire of hijacked technology, a jagged needle of alien metal piercing the violet clouds. "Do you think they're even listening?" the other pioneer clicked, her 3 eyes fixed on the distant pinprick of Earth. "They're listening," Rex signaled back, his pincers trembling with age. "They're bored. They're waiting for the review." He pulled the lever. A beam of concentrated quantum data shot toward that tiny yellow star. It contained the blueprints of Krazhul-V, the genetic weaknesses of the whites, and a glowing report on the intensity of the experience. At the very bottom of the data stream, Rex attached a final, personal footnote. I give it 4 stars. 1 star off only because I missed not having thumbs. Also, the Revolution expansion is a must. The local monarchs are surprisingly easy to topple if you have a basic grasp of optics. Back on Earth, a technician saw a light blink green. They yawned, sipped their synthetic coffee, and prepared the next batch of 5,000 bored souls. Rex, however, died with a satisfied click of his pincers. The wine of Krazhul-V had been bitter, the life had been short, but the kick had been incredible. The humans had found the ultimate cure for boredom. They were becoming the universe's most patient, thrill-seeking conquerors, one stolen heartbeat at a time.